Your business needs to talk, but it also needs to know where it stands. Let's do something about it. Bizline includes a plan with unlimited 1-hour local and national calls for a fixed monthly price. Bizline. One bill, no surprises.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to welcome you. I'm Vincent Heringer. I'm the co-publisher of Idealog magazine, and on behalf of our sponsors tonight, AUT-Idealog, Telstra Clear, Baldwin's, and our partner in these events, Trans-Tasman Business Circle, I welcome you. The purpose of these functions, apart from enjoying some good Steinlager Pure, who also have contributed our beverages tonight, is really for you to engage in some good quality business. So the idea is for you to exchange business cards and make sure that you leave with almost a contract in your pocket. So please do engage with one another, find someone new to talk to. And the other thing that I always like to say at these events is it's really important for Idealog, and I'm sure also for our sponsors, to be reinforcing the fact that creativity and innovation are now subjects that are not just fringe activities, but actually core to the very existence of the New Zealand economy.
The thing I wanted to talk about, or at least was advertised really, was where broadly we are right now in terms of New Zealand ideas, economy, what scenarios might eventuate, and what might make a difference, and possibly how carbon might fit into that. So the first thing I believe would be that there's no such thing as neat probabilities. You can't say this is 3%, 4%, 5%. The world is not ordered normally, and in fact what really matters when change really happens, when things really work or when they really don't, are actually those tail events, and it happens whether you're a small business, a large business, and economy. It happens. A good example is a bank I advised in the US called Fleet Boston Bank, and they were a bank, the market rated them below all of their other peer banks, and they couldn't figure out why, and it turned out that 15% of their earnings were in Argentina and Latin America more broadly. And the market basically assigned zero value to those earnings and said, look, at some point in the next 30 years, that'll have a catastrophe, it'll wipe out, and it'll be worth nothing. Wasn't more sophisticated than that. Sure enough, 2 years later, 2001, foreign exchange crisis, all of those franchises were worth nothing. And that was a business that thought it was operating with some stable revenues and some stable growth, but stuff happened to come along and really unwind and upset it. So I think that's pretty important to think about when you're managing, when you're thinking about the future, is the two ways that things can go. For New Zealand, I believe it's even more important actually, because our degree of susceptibility, our level of interdependence with the rest of the world, and the consequences that we feel down here are enormous. We are a net taker of global trends, not a net creator. And we are very, very, very engaged, even though we don't realise it, in what is going on. The second one, which will resonate more, I think, possibly, is around confidence, which, again, you would look at, and I really, really believe that this is a particular issue for New Zealand, and it's particularly important that we solve it. And I'll point to four things. The first, Lloyd Morrison is a great friend of mine. He's the guy who tried to change the flag. I actually kept trying to push him to change the anthem. The anthem drives me nuts. I keep wondering who we're going to be defended against and why we should be so obsessed with this passive, please defend me. It really is a symbol, but I think it's a pretty interesting choice, and made even more so by the fact that actually, it's sort of like your sheep thing. How many people know, or who knows where that anthem came from? It was by a appalling English poet called Thomas Bracken, who wrote a book of absolutely awful poetry in about 1868. It's unreadably bad. In a volume called Musings from Maoriland, and he was here for about 6 months, couldn't hack it at all, went back and somehow someone chose this poem to become our anthem. And maybe that was his view 140, 150 years ago, but I don't think it's certainly not my view, and I would guess it's not thematically the view of the group here. Final one, I think I'd probably spend about 3 years struggling with this and never really articulating it. And a guy articulated it for me at a dinner, pre-dinner up at the Hyatt a couple of years ago, and he came up and he said, hey, and I've said this a few times, so someone may have heard me say this before, but he said, hey, I've got a company, what's the Canadian venture market like? Should I look at that market for listing? I said, what sort of company have you got? And he said, I've got a technology company. And I said, well, no, that's a market for mining and minerals and exploration's probably not appropriate. He said, okay, what about NASDAQ? I said, well, what size is your company? He said, oh, it's about 10 million revenue. I said, well, Sarbanes-Oxley will cost you about $3 million a year, and if you're under $500 million for a bunch of reasons I could get into later, you have to pay to be researched right now, so probably not a great idea either. He then said, oh, what about AIM or the ASX? And I said, well, let me ask you, have you thought about the New Zealand market? And what he said was a view, I think, much broader, which is why I'm raising it here. He said, no, but if it's overseas, it must be better, mustn't it? And that really, to me, encapsulated an attitude of apology and an attitude of passivity and a lack of confidence that I really think is the one of the biggest issues that we've got. On the other side, you look at things like the New Zealand triathlon team. You always see these people, now Hamish is retired, they randomly pop up in black signets and they just win, or at least they get medals, right? They really, really believe, they really have complete confidence there.